We'd like to welcome everybody to another edition of Asea 5. We have with us the great Dr. Ray Dixon. He's currently at the Asea headquarters in Bangkok, Thailand, where they're having an event, but he hails from Phuket, Thailand, and originally from Australia, where all of his practicing occurred prior to Asea. We also have with us a special guest, Dr. Jill Taylor, who is a dental hygienist and naturopathic doctor. And she lives in Las Vegas. And just as many will probably notice, we're missing some of our co-anchors. Dr. Maureen Hayes is with her family in the state of Massachusetts at an event in Boston. And Jim and Ann Glenn are marrying off a son, as I understand it. And so I don't understand why they thought that was more important than being with us, but we'll let it ride and hope that they have a blessed time with their family tonight. Again, tonight it was Dr. Dixon and Dr. Taylor. We're going to have a little bit of a focus tonight on kind of natural healing as viewed through the eyes of natural healers and its role with Asea. So Jill, I'd like to welcome you. This is your first time with Asea. I'm sure you will become soon a fan favorite as you put out your expertise and share where you came from. Could we just get started and have you kind of introduce yourself and how you learned about this and kind of your journey through the discovery of Asea and what you've seen with it? Let's start with that.
All right. Well, Dr. Lee, you dripped on me. You and I have known each other in dentistry since 2005, when we're both instructors at LVI. And in 2019, we became Facebook friends. And we love Facebook because it really does kind of connect people across the country, right? And you invited me to join the Asea United, which I did. And you would post in there in the Redox Matters Facebook forum as well. And I would get your forum posts and I would read it and think, that's really great. You're all about mitochondria. And I know, Dr. Ray, in the holistic world, we're all about the mitochondria now. We all believe in the mitochondrial health. And so I don't know, I want to say it was maybe 6 months ago, 5 months ago, for whatever reason, I was frustrated with my mom, and my mom's not on the call, so I can talk about her. So I mean, my mom was my biggest success in my hygiene world, but she was my biggest failure in my naturopath world. I couldn't get to feel better. And I had tried herbs and anti-inflammatory herbs. We had tried CBD and we tried the cream and we tried the pills and nothing was working. She went back to Western medicine and used the Voltaren, which is a steroid, right? So we know that's affecting her gut and her liver. And she could get her hands to right about here. And if she did this, it was painful. Now, my mom is 86. She's maybe 95 pounds dripping wet. She's Italian, tiny. And of course, very active. And I just wanted her to feel better. So I gave my mom one of these little guys. And this is our gel. And I wrote on here, shake well, apply 3 times in 5 minutes. And she did. And, we're talking at dinner and all of a sudden she goes, wow. And she closed her hands and she goes, it doesn't hurt. And I'm thinking, okay, that's weird. All right. It's just a gel. It's clear. It's liquid. I mean, it's made from salt. I mean, you look at the ingredients and it's just salt water. And I'm thinking, how did that happen? So you and I started talking, you started mentoring me. I literally went full bore, as you know. I bought all of it because I wanted to know more about it. You sent me books. I've got my books. We've read this. We've highlighted it. So mom's now putting this on her ankles, on her knees, on her hips. I'm so excited that she's feeling this. But I've also got her drinking the blue bottle. And I started drinking the blue bottle because for me, holistically, I'm 57. So guess what I'm hitting, right? We're going through the change. And I was starting to get hot flashes. Now, my mom's 86 and she's still having hot flashes. So we had gone through the gambit. We had gone through, pardon? I'm sorry, you didn't say anything. So we had gone through the gambit. We had gone to several different, we had gone to a homeopath. We had gone to another naturopath. We had gone to several PAs. And ultimately, all we could get out of these people was the bioidenticals, rub, take the pills that were, you know, the progesterone compounded. She had been on Prema and Prempro until she was the horse urine until she was 75. She went off, got the hot flashes again, and then she got osteopenia. And I'm like, and then they tried to put her on A-class. And I'm like, absolutely not. We're not doing that. So for the blue bottle, the liquid, I thought, you know what? If it can change our hormones, we're going to drink this like it was Kool-Aid, like there was no tomorrow. So we started her out with 2 ounces in the morning, 2 ounces at night. And I started doing it. I am now up to 6 ounces. We're at month 5. And I really had no issues except the hot flashes in my life, in my entire life. So this was something that was a challenge. And I had been on a trip 2 weeks ago and I forgot my estrogen cream. And I thought, I didn't forget it. I brought it, but I bought, and it was like almost out. So I thought, oh, great, I'm going to be gone for a week and I'm going to run out. So I did 1 pump instead of 2 pumps. So I titrated myself down. And 3 months ago, I should say, I've been on it since January. So the estrogen cream, higher dose. And even missing one night, I would get the hot flashes that night. I noticed just in the last 2 weeks, which is way exciting, I'm titrating my hormones down. And so that's what's kind of exciting in my mind, is that what this is doing, and Ray, you can corroborate with this is really improving our cellular health. This is improving our cellular communication, which really is what a naturopath is trying to do. We're trying to get that body to heal itself. We're not trying to throw drugs at it like the Western medicine does. We want our bodies to heal, but we are so inundated with toxins in our world. You know, we have heavy metals in dentistry, of course. You know, we have glycophosphates, you know, in all of our food sources, you know, radioactive elements. We've got Lyme and parasites. I mean, you name it. We've got every toxin in the book. And so trying to get our cells to communicate is key. And all I can think of is, I mean, I used to, as a kid, play with mercury. I mean, I remember breaking a thermometer by accident and then playing with the little BBs, right? I was probably 6. We didn't know 50 years ago what that was doing to us, right? So, and then of course, Lee, you know, we're working in dentistry. We've got the aerosols of the amalgam. You know, it's the only safe place in the world is to pack it in our mouth, right? So, you know, I've had silver fillings and I've had it removed, you know, and we didn't have any kind of detox protocol prior to removal. So, you know, in my mind, one of the reasons why my body was having hot flashes and I didn't go through the change uneventfully is because my cells didn't communicate properly. So somewhere along the line, my mitochondria then were, for lack of a better word, they were toxic, right? Somewhere along the line, that mitochondria wasn't functioning properly, right? So that's my story and I'm sticking to it, and I'm never stopping the blue bottle because I don't like hot flashes.
Jill, that's great. I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Ray. Could you start off by giving us a disclaimer?
Oh, yes.
As we would do, and then maybe you can comment on some of the things that Dr. Jill was talking about, especially with regards to this natural healing idea.
Sure. Well, it's very important, everyone, that Asea does not claim to treat, prevent, cure, or use this product in any diagnostic way whatsoever. We are a natural product which has been is native made inside the human body in the mitochondria. We've simply been able to develop a bioreplenishment supplement to add to what the body is failing to produce with age. And then it's the inner doctor which does the work. Now, inner doctor has come with many names. The inner doctor is a favourite of Dr. Lee, but even with Jill and I in natural medicine and natural healing, it comes from a long line of philosophy called vitalism, which is essentially the body has an innate intelligence. That's what it's called in chiropractic, for example. And when the body's given what it needs, then it's able to manage its own disordered conditions or dysfunction within cells. So that's why Asea is a cellular health company. It's providing the deficiency in molecules and imbalances which occur. It's backing that up with the supplemental lines which provide the essential nutrients that the human body needs. There's up to 50 of those, thereabouts. These are things like the vitamins and minerals and amino acids, etc. So Asea is a cellular health company. Now, it's interesting when we talk about natural healing. It's almost an oxymoron to me because there's only natural healing.
Right.
There actually isn't any other form of healing. When we facilitate or regulate signs and symptoms with drug medications, we're still working within the realms of the body's ability to heal itself, which is natural. So even with antibiotic therapy, which was indeed to be able to help the body to deal with an onslaught of microbes, and there's no doubt they've saved multitudes of lives in its place. Of course, like all things, if it's abused and excessive, you then get the backlash and the other problems that come with it, like superbugs and everything else that we're dealing with today. So really, healing is natural. It's the inner intelligence built into the universe and this body in which we inhabit. And providing we can provide what that body needs, and this has been the experience of Jill, and this is why the Asea product, we judge it on results because we all think signs and symptoms, and we all look for that change in those signs and symptoms, or whatever that disease condition happens to be called. Once again, reminding everyone, the disease is irrelevant to redox signaling. Your inner doctor intelligence doesn't list things in disease names. These names have been given on the basis of humanity. We've given these names, including the one that Jill's mum had, an autoimmune condition where the body is attacking itself. That's one example of many, many. But it's amazing what happens when the body gets the redox balance right. And this is why I came out of retirement, because the results are so profound. Then if we get the micronutrients and macronutrient balance right, and you've written so well about that, Dr. Lee, in Healthy Matters, putting the redox in context with a healthy lifestyle. So Jill's journey is a common one for many. It's getting some kind of results, seeing some sense from this new, and it's a very new product and new science, and then jumping on board benefits and undergoing the revelation of what a powerful natural self-healing product it is, and adding it to whatever other protocol people use in practice, whether it's chiropractic, acupuncture, herbal medicine, nutritional medicine, whatever the case may be.
So thanks, Ray. Jill, could you take us through, for people who don't really know what we're talking about yet, how would you explain it in simple terms, in terms of what is redox signaling? What is this mitochondria thing you were talking about, and why does this matter? Could you kind of go there for a minute?
Sure. And, I've heard a lot of different analogies. To me, it's like playing hot potato, right? So redox is reduction, oxidation, and it's a process that happens in every cell of our body. And when you look at the cell, it has something in there that's called the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse, right? It's the energy source. And within that energy source, where we've got the Krebs cycle going on. And so we've got all these little molecules that are given off in that cycle, a biochemical thing. So it's all these hot potatoes kind of being dropped, and they're passing them from oxidation to reduction, to oxidate, reduction. So you've got the antioxidant that I think everyone's always so familiar with, which would be like vitamin C. But then you've got the oxidation part of it, which is like rust. And so as we age, you can kind of see it. We're rusting from the inside out when you see wrinkles, for example. I'll use that as what we can talk about. So our body, as we're aging, our mitochondria aren't as efficient. We're losing our energy ability to recharge, right? In our cell, we're not recharging to the top as an older adult compared to a youth. They're very virile, very prime, and their mitochondria are working to peak charge, battery charge. And so what cellular redox signaling is doing is it's giving us back. And like Dr. Ray said, it's native to our body. So these molecules are part of this recharging, if you will, of our battery. And the older we are, the more we need that recharging, so to speak, to try to help the oxidation of our cells. We're trying to get that oxidation to stop. So we're giving it back the antioxidant at the same time our body's producing the oxidation. Does that make sense?
It does.
Right. So, we have, I don't know, 39 trillion cells, which each cell has thousands of mitochondria. For example, our brain has 10,000 mitochondria. Our heart has 5,000 mitochondria. Our liver might have 2,000 mitochondria. So we have a plethora of batteries that need to be recharged, right? And what happens when we get older? We might get some brain fog, right? We might forget where we put the keys, find them in the freezer, right? So what's happened is our mitochondria aren't communicating anymore. And what our redox signal molecule will do is it helps restore that communication. It detoxifies the cell so it can talk and say, oh, yes, you don't need to have brain fog anymore, or you can have more energy. I mean, that's one thing I noticed is going through this change process as we go through life. I was waking up tired, and through my day, I was tired. And I started drinking the Redox, and my energy went through the roof. I could bounce out of bed like I felt I was 30 again. And I'm thinking, okay, this is really cool. And I already have a lot of energy. I don't need caffeine. So, but I noticed I didn't have that energy. So the Redox is just giving us back that battery, for lack of a better term. Yeah.
So let's continue with this, because I know you've got some friends who are athletes. They've asked you questions about exercise, running, endurance, performance, that type of a thing. What are your thoughts there? Come at it from a natural healing side as well as the mitochondria side.
So especially our endurance athletes, they are running at a deficit of not only oxygen, but just glucose, and they have a buildup of lactic acid, right? And so what this redox signaling molecule does is it, if you think about saline, right? It's sodium chloride, and then it's sodium water, it's hydrogen and oxygen. And so it's basically helping our muscles get rid of the lactic acidosis, right? It's putting us into, instead of a glucose burning, it's putting us into a fat burning mode right off the bat. So your endurance athletes don't bonk, if you will. They have more oxygen. They find that they can ride faster, climb longer, run longer, swim longer, for our triathletes. So, and it's like Ray said, it's native to the body. So there's nothing harmful. And going once again to that natural healing, we don't want to give, cyclists for a long time, they were taking EPO, right? The Lance Armstrong drug. And so they would have to be tested. Well, we've got cyclists that are taking this that are Olympians, right? Or that are Ironman and professional Ironman. So when you think about what this is doing for their bodies, it's helping their oxygen reserves long term. Would you want to add on to that at all?
Yeah, I want to kick it to Dr. Ray. If you could,
I mean, talk about the gene, not the gene study, but the mice study.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to go, is to have Dr. Ray kind of buddy up to your microphone there as best you can, and talk about that study that Dr. Neiman did.
Yeah, I'm hearing a bit of an echoing in my room, so I apologize for that. It's like an echo chamber here, so I'll kind of slow this down a little bit. The benefits for athletes really are at multiple levels. The most important fundamental is all cells run on redox molecules. So every single cell survives, heals itself, meaning repairs itself, reinvents itself, meaning redevelops new organelles constantly. This is all under the influence of redox signaling molecules and other things. But at the very pinnacle, at the coal face, is the reductants and the oxidants and the balance thereof and the numbers that Jill was referring to that are responsible for this. There was a question about whether redox is involved in the replication of cells. The whole body replaces 20 billion cells per day. So the average turnover is estimated to be around the 1 billion mark per hour. Well, they're brand new cells. That's a brand new world, full of mitochondria, full of organelles. That runs on redox. So yes, they are involved in cell replication. They're also involved in preventing abnormal cell replication.
Right.
Regulating the DNA. The DNA, the genome, well described in Dr. Lee's books, is regulated by the redoxone. Now, moving into the athletic world, it's cells that allow you to be athletic. So it's your cardiac myocytes of the heart, it's your skeletal muscle cells, it's your VO2 max, the ability of your lungs to get that oxygen on board and then deliver it via the red blood cells, hemoglobin, to where it needs to be. So indeed, it's now known that many of the benefits of exercise are due to the added mitochondria. Well, more mitochondria means more redox. So if you imagine you also repair quicker, then you can train harder. And if you can train harder, you step up performance and ability. So the multitude of athletes we already have using the product professionally will attest to this. They can, in many cases, they're training harder as they get older. That is not the way it's supposed to be because they're on this particular supplement. So imagine being able to not just heal quicker, to train to a higher level. Some of the studies that we've done demonstrated that the use of fatty acids to produce ATP was kicked in very early rather than waiting until you exhaust your glycogen glucose reserves and then hit the wall or bonking, or however you want to refer to that, or crashing. This kind of kicked you into a mode where you can burn more fatty acids, preserve some of your glycogen glucose reserves, which obviously is going to drive your athleticism further. And as Jill said, this is a native product of the human body. And there's no way of measuring the exact numbers. And there's no, because we're talking trillions per second, per minute, per hour, per day. And there's no way of measuring exactly how deficient you are. That also means there's no way of measuring whether you're taking an external supplement or not.
Right. It's not detected. That's right.
Because it's natural, native to the human.
And it doesn't. Sorry, Dr. Ray.
know is too, is too. But the fact is, erythropoietin that drives your production of red blood cells, we know those numbers. So we've got millions upon millions of studies around the world, so we know the number range that it should fall within, even though that is a range. And so if you go over that upper limit, well, they know you're doping, so to speak. But in terms of supplementing with the extra redox molecules, there's no negative, because as you said, they will go back to salt water once they've done whatever work is necessary to help maximize the cellular function and performance and health. They just go back to salt water. We're full of salt water. Salt water is not a problem.
Yes, someone asked what the chemical makeup is, and it's just salt water. And that's the beauty of it. It's transparent to any medication that you're taking. Like I've got friends that are diabetics that ride bikes. Well, if they're on insulin, this, if anything, and this is the gene study, this helps your hormones. This helps, and I won't say regulate your hormones, but it over time will help that hormone balance. It'll help vascular balance. I mean, they've got a gene study that has proven that you have anywhere from 20 to 31% change in these genes that affect your immune system, your vascular system, your hormone system, your digestion system, right? I mean, and like you said, Dr. Dixon, there's nothing that if you don't do a blood test, you can't see the redox, but you can see the effects. But now let's just say you have high blood pressure and you can't feel high blood pressure. You can't feel redox either. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't feel anything, right? And you're right, you might not feel anything, but we could do gene studies on you and show that you're changing, right? And that's the beauty of it. It works.
So I'd like to come at another angle for the natural healing idea, and that has to do with what I call the redox regulatory circuit. The question is, how does the body natively understand it's in trouble? What does it do about it? How does it respond to it? And that has to do with these transcription factors. NRF2 is one of them that we talk a lot about. Jill, could you address that at all from that natural healing, the inner doctor kind of idea?
So inner doctor, now I'm trying to think where you want me to go with this. Was like with the keep molecules? Yeah,
what happens? How does this redox switch, that we sometimes talk about, how does the cell know it's in trouble?
So how does the cell know it's in trouble? To me, that I'm thinking cellular danger response. I mean, our cells basically, when you're going through a cell danger response, C1, C2, C3, any kind of pathogen can turn the switch off. And so having the redox molecule will ultimately switch it back on if there's a toxin. I mean, because this will literally detoxify the cell over time. But again, it's not something that happens overnight. It's not like I can switch on a light and the light turns on. It will, in some cases, like your wife, right, over time, but it might take 4 months, it might take 6 months, it might not happen just in one day to have that switch turn on. Is that what you're speaking of?
In some regard. Ray, do you want to chime in on that, the transcription factor too?
I think essentially in terms of evolution in the material physical world, and the body is a material physical entity, there are multiple layers at which the human body interprets damage and then responds to that damage. Some of those are at the transcription, which really is gene signaling level. Of course, that cascade then way down from there. And then some of that in turn will result in anti-inflammatory cortisol levels going up. or an increase in adrenaline or noradrenaline to mount a stress response so that the body can cope better at that. So there's an entire cascade. But I think what you're getting at, Dr. Lee, and you know it better than we do,
Right.
is when you come right up at the coalface of the damage between oxidation and inflammation, there are critical transcription factors necessary to recognize that and then respond to that. In what way? With extra glutathione, the most powerful antioxidant in the human body, or extra superoxide dismutase of catalases, more antioxidants made within the human body. So right at that gene transcription level, redox signaling molecules do the talking. This is what we mean by signaling. They direct, you need to respond to this. And if they're out of balance and lacking, it's almost like a snowball effect downhill of oxidative, because that isn't recognized and the appropriate pathways are not turned on to respond to that damage. Now, I want you to elaborate a little bit more on that, Lee, because you know more about that than anyone I know. But having said that, I want to clarify something that's been said and is coming up in the questioning. No, redox signaling molecules is not salt water. Okay, salt water is sodium chloride, hydrogen, and oxygen. The redox, the reductants, and the oxidants are byproducts of the change that consisted of those atoms reconstituted. Hydrogen peroxide is not salt water, okay? And there's a whole bunch of these redox molecules made from salt water. So drinking or supplementing with a redox signaling molecule, Asea, is not the same as drinking salt water in any shape or form. This is really critical to understand. It is not salt water. There is a complex electrochemical process that takes place. It used to be over 3 days. They've got it quicker now to create these redox signaling molecules, the same as they're created inside the mitochondria of the cell through electron transfer. You know, they do get created, but they're not salt water when they're created. And then they signal or act as transcription factors, as Dr. Lee's mentioned.
They're the building blocks for the redox signaling molecules, if you think of it that way. It kind of goes back to, I'm trying to think, the erector sex, where they had all, and you could make almost an atom. It wasn't like an erector sex. Isn't that what they were called? Do you remember where you put the wood sticks, and you'd put all the wood sticks and you make these or very, very intricate models? When you think of salt water, yes, they are sodium, chloride, hydrogen, and oxygen, but those are the basic building blocks that separates them. And then, as you said, Dr. Dixon, they are put back together in different forms to be the redox signal molecules. Yes?
Yeah, the idea here is that a redox molecule or a reactive oxygen species, you'll sometimes see that in the literature as ROS. Yeah. That is a molecule that has an electrical charge to it. These are reactive molecules, and they're very unstable. You create them through electrolysis, at least in a laboratory, and they last for milliseconds. They're not stable, and they perish is the word they use. They denature. But when they are stabilized, and that's the key breakthrough with what the Asea researchers were able to accomplish, is they were able to electrolyze saline and create these reactive molecules. They have to be suspended in some solution, and that solution is saline. And that's why when you look at the bottle, on the side of the bottle, it will say that it has saline in it. Well, you're not purchasing, you're not buying, and you're not necessarily drinking saline for saline. You're doing that because of the reactive molecules that are suspended in the saline. And fortunately, we have about an 18-month shelf life of these reactive molecules before they begin to decay. That's why you need to respect that and to use them in some timely fashion after you get them. but it's those reactive molecules that do the signaling. Those are part and parcel of how the body responds to stress, and how it responds by way of directing the DNA of what to do next. We kind of magically throw this out like, well, we're just going to make some more glutathione. But it doesn't just magically happen like that. We have to tell the DNA how to make this protein called glutathione that can then come in and act as a reductant and stabilize and bring us back to homeostasis or balance. And that whole process is driven by these reactive molecules. And one of the things I wanted to have both of you to respond to is this, and that is, and we're not here comparing ourselves to other companies, but we talk about this being a biohack. It's a bioidentical molecule that allows us to hack, if you will, or to upregulate or to create a response within the cell. So this hacking or this biohacking, your comments on that, Jill, and then Dr. Ray.
Well, we just mentioned glutathione, and I think a big biohack that's very common right now in anti-aging is to do IV glutathione. And while that is very helpful, it's kind of cost prohibitive, and then you have to go every day, every week. And so they come out with pills of glutathione, and we know that just having taking a pill, it will disassociate in the gut and it won't be available in the body. And so the beautiful thing about biohacking this product, in a sense, is that when you drink it, it literally will reconstitute itself in whatever cell is needed. I mean, it will go to, if your liver needs it, if your heart needs it, if your lungs need it, I mean, wherever your cell has damage, it will act upon. So we're reversing that damage. I mean, basically, we're trying to detect, repair, and replenish with this. And it's a biohack in the sense that it goes wherever it's needed. And you can't drink it and say, I just want this to affect blank. It'll go wherever your body needs it. And that's, to me, the biohack. And anti-aging and other disciplines want to target things. And to me, this targets your entire foundational level. It's a cellular foundational communication. And it's not like, I mean, I know in one of the other Aseas, Dr. Ray talked about how important nutrients are, and that this isn't like taking a vitamin C. We still need to eat oranges and to eat watermelon, and we have good nutrition. But so much of our nutrition is not nutrient. I mean, there's no nutrients in I mean, there's oranges that don't have any vitamin C. And so this, to me, is a biohack to offset everything else.
Dr. Ray, could you respond to that and then maybe take us into nutrition?
Yeah, I can, Dr. Lee, but where I think perhaps a further clarification could take place is more from your perspective and understanding of the reactive oxygen species, which is one category of redox signaling molecules. Because where I think a lot of people don't quite get the connections is they've had a pretty bad rap in the past on the basis of causing oxidative damage, and there was no benefit seen to their presence. And that's where the term redox signaling molecule has come into play. It's not that we've just discovered some of the redox signaling molecules. What we've discovered is that they are redox signaling molecules. They're not just exhaust or bad products causing damage to the body. So from a hormesis point of view, which for the benefit of everyone listening is a little bit is good and too much is not good. So from the perspective of reactive oxygen species and oxidants, most people are thinking there's too much of that in the human body. So why do we need more? Why do we need to supplement with some reactive oxygen species if we've got plenty? So I think that leads to a far greater level of clarification, quite frankly. And I think you're the best person for that job.
That's a biohack.
Well, you put me on the spot, huh? So this is an important one, and we'll just take a minute here because I know there's a lot of health professionals that are that's one of the reasons that we're doing this is to interview health professionals and make the medical validating case for redox signaling. The principle of hormesis is, and that's spelled HORMESIS. You can Google that and learn all about. This is what I call the Goldilocks principle. If there is too much of something or too little of something, that's going to produce a problem in the body. What the body is designed to do is to respond to a mild stress. And in the cell, we define that as oxidative stress. Basically, the cell thinks really simply. If we dumb this down real simply, and I know the cell doesn't work exactly in simple terms all the time, but we could think in this almost binary kind of way. It's either oxidized or it's balanced. It either is missing electrons or it has a balance of electrons. That's the signal. When anything happens, whether it's toxins or low oxygen levels or drugs or hunger or exercise or whatever, when there's just a little bit of stress imposed on the cell, this signal gets generated that basically says, if the cell could think for itself, it says, gee, I'm in trouble. I need to do something to get stronger, better, faster, whatever. Because if I don't, I'm going to die. It's like I'm missing food. I've got too much stress, too much oxidation. So I need to respond to that. Because if I don't respond, then things are going to go south. And so it does that. And this is called the adaptive stress response. And if I have high amounts of stress, if I have high degrees of oxidation, high levels of toxicity, then I'm going to have an inflammatory response. That's also a redox reaction. It's just the movement of electrons from one molecule to the next in these cascading pathways. But if I have too much, then I'm going to have inflammation, which results in disease. If I have just the right amount, we call it a mild or physiological amount of this oxidative stress, it turns on the cell defenses, the cell survival genes, the pathway genes that put my cell back together to make it stronger, to be more adaptive, so that I can live to fight another battle. That's kind of the basis of that hormesis. And it's not too little, it's not too much, it's just right. And we have examples of that in exercise. We have examples in sunshine. We have it in nutrition. We have it in energy loading or eating too much or too little. And this also deals with the intermittentness of stress. It's the intermittent application of stress that sets the cell into a survival strategy. And that's what we want, is to activate these survival genes or these health genes. I call it awakening your inner doctor, because then that's where that natural healing comes from. So maybe that will help some people kind of understand this concept. And again, it's not the salt, it's not the saline, it's the reactive molecules that produce this very mild amount of oxidation that counterbalances. In the science terms, we talk about crosstalk. It's the healthy pathways and the disease pathways, and the healthy pathways crosstalk with the disease pathways and shut them down. One thing that you said, Jill, earlier that I think is really an important one, and we've been hearing this a lot from the medical professional board as well as the company itself, and that is the idea that redox signaling is about cascading. It's about absorption and cascading. It's not a drug effect. It's not a lock and key receptor site drug molecule looking to effect a change somewhere. It's this cascading signaling. It's almost a little bit electrical in its context, because I'm instantaneously generating a cascading effect at that cell level where there's this signaling, this electrical communication that's occurring. And so that sometimes trips people up, because that leads them into the next thing of, well, like, how do I know it's working? Like if I take an aspirin for a headache, I expect in 30 minutes that the headache's going to go away, because it's a drug, it's got an effect on something. And that's not the way this works. Jill, could you expound on that a little bit?
Well, like you said, it's a lock and key when you're working with something like aspirin. It goes to whatever target it is. And with redox signal molecules, there is no lock and key. And I can't remember exactly what you called it. It's the reverse of the lock and key. It's like it's just out there, meaning the cell's damaged and it needs to be repaired. And so, but it will go to whatever cell it is. So you might be taking it for one thing that you think you're having an issue with, but it might go to another thing that is more important in its damaged mind, if for lack of a better word. So I don't want to say you can't have an expectation. The expectation is, like you said, it's not an immediate solve the problem, whatever the symptom is. I mean, we could put a disease name out there, right? And it doesn't matter what it is, because all disease starts with the mitochondria stopping the communication. As soon as that mitochondria stops the communication, the disease process starts, right? And it could be 8 years prior. And so while you're taking these molecules, it's a cascade effect in the sense that it's going through your entire body, finding what it needs. It doesn't go right to, like, it kind of goes back to how this came about, isn't it? I mean, when it was on track to be a drug with the FDA, we had to somehow come up with, okay, what are we trying to cure, for lack of a better word, because that's what drugs do. They try to cure something, right? And it was too generalized. It hit too many boxes. It checked too many boxes. And then when they tried to do a lethal dose study, we couldn't kill anything. And so we couldn't come up with, we couldn't help the FDA give us the okay that it's a drug, right? Because it was supposed to be saline for HIV in the operating room, immediate, right? And so we were very blessed because our founder basically said, no, we're not going to sell it to the pharmaceutical company. We're going to go on track and, make it, we'll go the supplementation route, which was great because it hits everything, but it hits what it needs, right?
So the next question, and I think you segued that up really great. The next question is, I can tell my story about how this affected me when I first heard about this, but that has to do with it's the chicken bone in the throat for me.
Well, that's why you and I didn't talk for several years.
Yeah. So how did that hit you? How did you overcome that? And how do you see that now? You said it's a good thing they didn't. So why are we marketing it this way?
Well, we're marketing this way, and that's why we have how many panelists now? We have 185 people in our room right now, which is awesome because we're sharing stories, and we're sharing stories with passion. I mean, I love my mom, and her story for me is what makes me so excited about it. And just the fact that I don't have hot flashes anymore, which is really kind of cool. They're starting to get better. So by sharing stories, we can't put, to put salt water on the shelf of Walmart, it's not going to sell, because when the consumer reads, that's all it is, it's just salt water. Who's going to buy salt water? We can go home and put some Morton salt in our water, stir it up and drink it, right? But this isn't salt water, like you said. So to tell stories and to go the route of, and I hate to say it, the MLM, that was the smartest thing that they could have done. And I really didn't want to, in my practice, have an MLM. And I don't know how Dr. Dixon felt about it, but I just didn't feel like it gave me validity as a practitioner. And, but when it works, and it works so well, all right, I swallowed the chicken bone. I did it. I told you I was all in, because you have to be, and there's some multi-level marketing in the physician's desk reference, right? So, there's some validity. There are good products out there. It's just finding one that works and works across such a huge, large spectrum, right? I know Dr. Dixon said at one point, you know, Dr. Ray is like, you know, this is it. He's looked for the panacea of all supplements and came across this, and he's like, okay, this is what I want. So, you know, you just have to go with what works. And that's the kicker. It works. So when it works,
that is what drives it. And I appreciate your comments, because we share the same pain early on. And I tend to look at this, this networking thing. It's the only way that we could share it and be able to talk about our precious stories and about our family members, because this is ubiquitous. It's everything out there, and it allows us this platform. Ray, what she kind of queued you up there. Would you, because I know you dealt with this, and you've got some really keen insight as we finish up here. And then tell us how big this is.
Yeah.
And then tell you what?
Tell us where this is going. It's like, how big is this?
Oh, well, firstly,
with your meeting.
I don't have this issue, MLM versus no MLM. I mean, to me, it's a perfectly legal direct marketing method of sharing a product. So that's the first thing I want to get out of the way from my point of view. I've used other multi-level marketing products in my clinic years and years before Asea even existed. I had no issue with it. Whether I chose to do it as a business or not is a different thing. But sharing a product that works, of course, it's a no-brainer. And there's actually a lot of very good and powerful nutritional products and herbal, which have been long shared via direct marketing, word-of-mouth marketing. So I didn't have an issue with that. I was not also one that could just take it and see a result which flicked on the light bulbs. It's very important for a lot of people to realise this, including health professionals, very skeptically from results. When the results roll in, and they always do, it's just a matter of time and dose, how much you take, then they have to figure out how does it work and why does it work. And that's what happened with you, Dr. Lee, with regarding your wife's experience. Her results were so profound, you had to figure it out. What is this stuff? So you came from a result, even though it was maybe not perhaps exactly yours at the beginning. I was a 62-year-old at the time. I'm 67 now. I had no health issues. I was on no drug medication, and I felt perfectly fine. So what can I expect to feel taking extra redox signaling molecules? Well, it's not just what I'm expecting to feel, and this gets back to the symptom management idea. It's what I don't want to get. I'm 67. Diseases. It's proven. It's statistical evidence, from cancer to macular degeneration to you name it. And they're in my family. I don't want them, as well as rogue cells. So I'm certainly supplementing with 6 cups a day, which is 12 ounces, to stay well, even though I have noticed some improvements with sleep and some extra mental clarity. They're subtle for me because I was pretty well in that respect. I think we also need to share with the inner doctor, this is not a sort of a fiction. Okay, the body heals itself constantly. You heal. That is a process. And it's multifaceted and very deep. And from the natural healing perspective, and this doesn't matter if it's nutritional, fasting, yoga, keto dieting, medicine, homeopathy, chiropractic, it doesn't matter. They all facilitate that inner doctor in one form or another. And there's been observations through thousands of years as to what happens when the body is healing. And it's quite fascinating. You know, chronic diseases retrace. There is a retracing process back out of the disease you've now got. And that might take some time. In some cases, some years, not just some months. And we see that exactly happening on redox molecules. You know, an eczema condition you had 20 years ago may come back when your asthma's disappeared. You know, it's just part of the body's natural healing process when it's getting what it needs. When it needs those extra redox molecules we don't produce anymore, supplement of that, triggering or signaling through the transcription factors, we need to address this, as you said, Dr. Lee, and that then triggers those other pathways of producing the reductant process, glutathione, etc., to address that damage, and therefore things reverse and heal. But subtly at the beginning, it's subtle, but it's powerful. Most people will feel more energetic. That is very subtle, but very, very powerful. Their brain fog will lift early. They will sleep better. All critical things for the body to be healthy and well. So you'd expect those to start to show early. In terms of what other signs and symptoms you want to go, you're not in charge.
Right. That's my point.
The inner doctor's in charge. And you can just keep the process with clean air, clean water, healthy diet, some supplements, and by all means, redox. I've never seen anything work as powerfully as redox signaling molecule.
And I'll just put I'll add to that, because you kind of hit on that. You can't sit there and eat Cheetos or Doritos on the couch and expect to feel healthy. You literally do have to, have a whole redox lifestyle, which is what Dr. Lee wrote about in Healthy Matters, Redox Matters, is you have to make sure that you're getting good sleep hygiene, that you're eating well, that you're getting your exercise, that you're limiting the toxins, you're not smoking, not drinking in excess, that kind of stuff. So definitely you want to make sure that you're living that redox lifestyle. And one other thing that we didn't talk about is, they say that if you go on it, the recommended dose is to do 2 ounces in the morning and 2 ounces at night, right? The little cups. I'm up to 6, like you, Dr. Dixon. And literally, I think that's when I really started feeling a shift. So if you're not feeling it with 2, or you're not feeling it with 4, go up to 6. If you're just had surgery, you might want to do 8, whatever your body's struggling with, make sure that you recognize what your body is struggling with and appropriately dose yourself, for sure.
Well, this has been a powerful hour with 2 naturopaths and discussing natural healing and kind of the principles and the properties of the cell. We so appreciate being able to have Dr. Jill Taylor with us and Dr. Ray Dixon, who comes all the way from Bangkok tonight, and from his special sound room there. But he's doing some presentations for some corporate events there in Bangkok. This is going around the world. In terms of where this is going, I know there's probably a lot of people who are new to this, who are watching or listening to this, or will do that on the recording for the first time. My recommendation would be for you to get back with the person who invited you here or told you about this and learn more. There's plenty of resources now. When we first started, and when those who introduced this to us first started, this was a very, very brand new concept, in the world. And so now it's kind of out there. And I would just encourage you, take a serious look or a think or a study or whatever you have to do to wrestle this to the ground and ask the pivotal question about what are your cells doing? What do they think about your lifestyle? We get up here in our own brains and, we have our own habits and our own things that we do, but that's not how your cells think. They think on basis of principles. And if you don't feed them the right things, they can't work right. And they're going to treat you that way. And you'll eventually show up needing medical intervention to make up for the deficits that you're just not resolving naturally. So get with the person who invited you, contact one of us. We can forward you to them or whatever, but come help us spread the word. In our respective practices, we have the ability to treat a limited number of people. And we've all recognized that if we just open our mouth and start sharing this with people, and they start sharing it with people, and they share it with people. We've now vertically integrated. We call it generational leverage. And that's the magic of this form of marketing. It's networking. And I tend to think of it more as next level marketing because it's about generational leverage, and it works very fast and very quick. So I thank you, Dr. Dixon, for setting some time aside for us. It's the morning where you are at, the evening for the rest of us in real time. And Dr. Jill, thank you for coming on for your first time on Asea 5 and sharing your journey and your experiences. And we look forward to next week. I cannot tell you who we're going to have on because I don't know. But we will be here again next Friday at 8 p.m. Central Time, United States time. This recording will be put up in about an hour or two on redoxmatters.com, where you can access it and many other of the videos. So thank you. Any last words, Jill?
No, thank you. I'm so excited to have met the Ray Dixon.
He's the greatest legend here, Dr. Lee.
And Dr. Lee.
He's my other brother from the other side of the world.
Well, thank you, both of you, for hosting. We appreciate it.
All right. And good night, everybody. And thank you for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
Good night.